Hello, everyone, and welcome to Borzoi Cast, a show about culture in the context of philosophy, history, and economy. My name is Arvi.
And I'm Alina, and today we're talking all things K-pop. We finally watched K-pop Demon Hunters, a thing that blew up immensely, done by the same studio that did Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And we loved the animation film. I actually missed the times when Pixar and Disney animation was as good as this.
Very expressive. I think at some point, like during one of the calmer scenes, actually, during one of the dialogue scenes, I was like leaning to you and be like, they're so fluid. They're so the girls from the K-pop band, they were like the facial animations along with the body language, along with everyone else. But then they bursted in all of these, I want to say anime-esque expressive facial
I think
features.
They hit a golden balance when it comes to the raw expression, the theme, all the funny moments, and at the same time the authenticity and the sincereness of the experience that they're trying to portray. Because I wouldn't say that this is the most complex story ever. It is not. It is a simple story, but the beauty of it is how it's being expressed, what the characters are, how they are behaving. I loved it.
I think the moment I fell in love with this movie was when the derpy tiger appeared. The tiger with the OCD and the bird. But no, yeah, in general, I would say it's actually an interesting point about sincerity, like sincerity and authenticity of it, because I feel like K-pop Demon Hunters presents us with a very interesting mix of things. Our protagonists, the trio, K-pop trio band, they have a producer, and the producer is like a comic relief character. He's actually played by the guy who he played in the Hangover movies, in
Right.
Pain and Gain, and he's like a very on the kinder side, like also a little bit derpy, also like very neurotic comic relief kind of character. Whereas in real life, the producer would be one of the fiercest motherfuckers out there, like in this whole story. Like if we were to say that this is real in any form of fashion, he would be, I don't know, if not the antagonist, he would definitely not be a comic relief.
Yeah, to me personally, the golden moment of the show was the song Your Idol. And I think it's also going to be the theme of our today's conversation, which is, unlike our other episodes, is not going to be that much concentrating on the plot of the animation film itself, but rather on the meanings around it, because if you haven't seen it, you definitely should. If you have seen it, then you know what we're talking about. When I said that the animation film hit a really good balance, I think it's also a good balance between going into a cultural, ethnic topic, but still making it for wide audience without losing a lot of information. They've put a lot of layers. If you know, you know. If you don't, you're going to be interested in finding out what those layers are about. One of the things was about the tiger and the bird, right? So they are like this hamster and the smaller bird from Spirited Away.
Yeah.
They're also quite a comic duo. And one of the people on TikTok explained that the way the tiger is portrayed in paintings from lower classes, from just regular people in 1600s. And the tiger was always the embodiment of the ruling class, while the bird is supposedly the embodiment of the rest of the people who the tigers are ruling. They would appear quite often together on the pictures. So the phrase, "I made the hat for the tiger, but the bird keeps taking it," actually might mean that the bird is smarter than the tiger. I think this hat also represents the ruling power in a way, and the fact that the bird keeps taking it is funny to me. And the second thing that I find out, which is also interesting and it's never explained for the non-Korean speakers, is that sajaboys, so saja in Korean is a lion. That's why they have this lion for the boys band. But also saja is present in the Soul Reapers in Korean, in how they're named.
Personification of death, of Grim Reaper in culture and stuff. I think it's a quite interesting thing in general, because when K-pop blew up internationally, sort of several years ago, but at this point, maybe a decade ago. It does have this mixture of international appeal with the national elements within them. So, like the mixture of they're singing in several different languages, they're incorporating either traditional or international visuals in their performances or music videos and in stage decorations and stuff like that, and their costumes. And so it's quite interesting where, again, I'm not a K-pop person myself. Like literally, like things that I know from K-pop as a genre and as a phenomena are, of course, like some mainstream stuff, mainstream offshoots like KDA from League of Legends. But then, of course, like stuff that breaks into the mainstream, various different single songs and stuff like that. But I never actually like super followed it, although like I was familiar with it in general. And while preparing for this episode a little bit, I also found it interesting how inside Korea, it seems that there is also some criticism towards the lack of Koreanness in the actual K-pop bands a lot of times.
I tried to approach K-pop a couple of times. I think the main reason why I'm not a fan is the same reason why I'm not a fan of mainstream music right now. It's just not for me. I have a very specific taste. Mm-hmm. If you like it, bless your heart. So I think every time when I tried to approach it, I ended up watching Korean dramas, which is also an interesting segue into the culture. I wanted to mention, going back to the thematical representation of Korean Demon Hunters, which is, again, a great show. I love their songs. Now they're beating the records when it comes to the most listened song of boy band, girl bands. The song Golden is like a super hit right now. Sajaboys are taking over the world, even though they're an imaginary band. So they even beaten the record of the BTS. And coming back to the thematical representation of K-pop Demon Hunters, what I wanted to say is that on one hand, I do appreciate how they're trying to approach definitely a very sensitive topic of being your true self while also being a part of a collective, or in this specific example, being an idol. As I found out from the glimpse of an interview of the creator of animation film, the K-pop element actually came into the story very late.
Wait, what was it about before that?
So the creator was trying to find a day job that they would do together. And at some point, she thought, oh, okay, so they're probably going to be idols. And the sensitivity of that topic of being yourself and being not ashamed is, I would say, well represented as the first step in the movie. But at the same time, I feel there is this element of touching it not enough or covering not enough, because it's easy to accept your, air quote, ugliness when you're thin as a stick and the legs take up 8/10 of your body composition. In this regard, I would say that Shrek does it better, because what if the princess actually turned into a non-conventional beauty herself, which is what exactly happens in the movie. And yeah, I guess it just would be a different movie. This was not a creative risk they were going to take.
Can we talk about a bit more specificity what we mean right now with spoilers?
Okay, spoiler alert.
Because I feel like it's important to pinpoint that it's like we have the main trio of characters. They're our protagonists. They're K-pop idols. They're singers and dancers, but they're also demon hunters. They want to kill all demons, but it so happens that the main character is a demon herself. She's like half demon, half breed, whatever. And she hid this fact from her friends.
Yeah, so they have a visual representation of being a demon, which is having patterns, and she has patterns growing slowly over her skin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we see demons in the movie who are super duper ugly, like Oni-like, but the main sort of characters, both protagonist and antagonist, are super duper pretty. They are all around beautiful people. Of course, they're idols, right? They have to be. And the thing is that that's exactly where this tension is coming from, right? That because of the profession that is being picked, she can only get, okay, she has some full body tattoos now. Ooh, scary, ugly, oh. And, people need to accept the true nature, blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting to compare this to sort of the real world, right? How this K-pop industry, as many other industries under capitalism, are turned into essentially factory lines where people are being molded into the images, into the...
But wait, I have a rabbit hole to go before we go there. And this rabbit hole actually started from Jinu, the male antagonist of the movie. And when I was trying to understand if this guy is based on somebody, I also saw, I don't know how legit it is, but supposedly it's a quote from the same creative director of the movie who said that she based Jinu's characters on a couple of people, and I didn't know their names at all. So I decided to start Googling them, and then I was interested in like, okay, so maybe this is just another opportunity for me to get into K-pop and Korean culture, because I'm curious about this stuff. I'm curious about things that other people are passionate about, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good thing to try to understand what do they see in those things. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm going to see what's popular right now, and I will try to understand, is there anything like any interesting movies, any interesting TV shows that I can watch and take inspiration from. And so one of those male references was an actual K-pop idol called chaeunwoo. Chai is the surname, Eun is an artistic name of the guy. If you haven't seen his face, he looks like young Jet Li married with Rosamund Pike. Rosamund Pike has the most beautiful smile on this planet. I love her a lot. And I decided to watch a couple of Korean dramas with the guy because he also turned to be an actor. I watched True Beauty and Wonderful World. They are pretty recent. They were shot in the last 5 years.
What is time?
Yeah, and they have pretty high ratings. So I was set for a good quality. I did immensely enjoy both. I did watch a couple of other things as well. I also tried to watch a couple of Korean movies. Not to the same success level, I would say. But I was pretty happy when I was watching because some of them were really funny, but also pretty touching. I felt that I was missing it for a really long time watching American TV shows, British TV shows. I missed when people treat other people with kindness on screen, when they're positive characters, not only, bastards that are trying to backstab you all the time or people just sleeping with other people in a random order. It was really tiring me, and I realized it during but also after my Korean dramas ended. I suddenly felt a deep existential grief.
How so?
The grief stemming from first understanding that I miss this in real life. I miss a lot of kindness and a lot of, in a way, acceptance, but also support from a community. And maybe this is the element that I'm missing in my current surroundings. I'm missing this in modern culture. It was like an endorphin crash. So I was on the wave and then it crashed and I felt the emptiness that stayed after all the nice experience that I watched. Apparently there was an expectation that it's going to go on forever, but it didn't. Also, I do think that Korean dramas, the good ones, actually give a really positive way to introduce teenagers and younglings to positive role models. That's why I think other cultures should also incorporate more of the elements, because we did have a conversation recently about me missing positive protagonists. And as a writer, I heard it a lot from producers, from other writers that, positive characters, they're not that really interesting to watch because they do all the right things. It's more interesting when somebody does wrong things and they're broken inside. This is one of the internal engines for American TV series in general too, when there's a conflict that constantly drives the story, which generates new episodes, new situations, and all this kind of stuff. But to be honest, I am tired of watching people be assholes. I have enough of that in the real life. Why would I even want to watch anything like that?
And I feel like it's also especially painful when it's done not that great. We've discussed this offline. Better Call Saul, right? One of my favorite shows of the decade, even though it didn't start as that. But I do find it interesting how Vince Gilligan, the co-creator of the show, went on stage to say about the importance of having better protagonists, as in like good people protagonists going forward, because it is about the amount, right? The amount of stories about assholes that we have and about the situations that we delve in. But when it's too much of this particular thing, I feel like a lot of people strive for something different.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of balance. Because I was interested in how other people perceive the same thing that I watched. Do they have the same existential grief? Do they have more hope or less hope after that? And I found an interesting study that shows that people who watch Korean dramas show better emotional expression. It made me think a lot. So one of the dramas that I watched, True Beauty, I would find it even deeper when it comes to theme than K-pop Demon Hunters, because the TV show in its entirety is about a girl who is perceived to be very ugly. She has acne-prone skin, and the moment when she learns how to use makeup, she turns into a different person. She also luckily goes to another school where she can present her new identity and being taken for this gracious girl, high schooler, and start from anew. And you see this change of perception, the benefits that she gets from that. And it's also a story about two other main characters who are fighting for her love, and they build relationship together over 16 episodes. And those are really nice guys, like each with his own personality. But the thing that I cannot ignore is the appeal of bromance, because those two looked even more organic together than when they were with the female protagonist. And I was thinking about it a lot. What is the secret of bromance? Why does it have such a wide appeal? And I did come to a couple of conclusions. Also, of course, reading things online. At first, I thought maybe for me, it's just the enjoyment of watching other people being passionate about something. A lot of bromance, at least to me, looks like people fighting with each other over something that they're passionate about.
Fighting?
There's a lot of unresolved tension between male characters in bromance when they have heated emotions, when they're angry at each other or they disagree with passion. They play aggressive sports. In this particular drama, it was jiu-jitsu, they played basketball, they played handball, they played, I think, football as well. What did they not play? So it's, this sport thing really heated. And then there's also some element of boxing or singing competition or bike riding together, which is also competition.
So they're releasing the tension through sports, through competitive.
Exactly.
But okay, but is it the case of men will do anything except going to therapy, or is it more like in a positive way because they still talk, right? They still communicate.
I think it's both, because the topic of mental health and therapy as a result, I think also belongs still to a social stigma, which you cannot talk without certain vulnerability in the rest of the world as well.
Yeah.
And the second thing to that is, I believe as traditional masculinity norms are being challenged in this particular case in Asian region, pop culture has created a certain outlet for more emotionally expressive male friendship. I saw this phrase, inclusive masculinity. Young men today feel free to show affection and show vulnerability without fearing being seen as less masculine or gay. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma also around vulnerability and showing emotions.
It's actually interesting, and I think if we're going to have a section later on when we talk about K-pop industry in particular, we can talk about it more, but it also in a way reflected in how in its images and in its performances, K-pop artists and K-pop bands in general also tend to reflect certain social tendencies that are not actually widely present or widely talked about. Like we can talk about it later on.
TLDR to bromance is, I believe in societies where male emotional expression is suppressed, bromance offers a socially acceptable outlet. And that sometimes also leads to, or maybe it is just connected with the phenomena also known as soft boys. So in Japanese, it's going to be bishonen. In Korean, for the love of me, I cannot spell it out, but I think they're called flower boys. This is visually soft masculinity, but not also that. These are characters who are emotionally open and quite perceptive, which is an interesting contrast to the rest of the Western stoic masculinity, right?
But I would assume also in contrast to what is happening in Korean society as well. Like things like 4B movement do not rise from deep understanding between genders.
This is my hypothesis, but I also think after the trauma of Second World War, Japan and Korea especially shifted away from militarized masculinity because Japan, for example, was even banned from having an internal army at all. And so they had to shift towards corporate or creative masculinity to kind of reinvent itself without the aggression, right? And so I think that the aesthetics of soft boys plus what I would call White Angora Sweater, this is the thing that I notice continuously throughout watching different Korean dramas, is that good characters at any given point, but I think at least once per the entire show, have to wear a fluffy, natural, white-collared sweater to stress their softness and the goodness. So soft boys plus white sweaters turn into, in essence, the non-threatening men, which I think is the appeal to this. I mentioned that the study shows that people who watch Korean dramas show better emotional expression. But another study shows that viewers have higher self-image dissatisfaction. And I think this is where we can talk about beauty as physical capital in competitive societies, right?
Yeah, because even if we're not talking about the performative industries, right, actors and singers, you look at tendencies worldwide, like the Instagram face, so to speak, the influencer face, and how this becomes more and more widespread as a thing, right? Because all of us have these digital boxes in our hands 24/7, looking at an endless feed of beautiful people, rich people, all of the personalities that look amazing, that look ideal, they're perfect. And it's very easy to forget how performative this whole thing is. And so like when you're looking at, Korean drama about, real things and about real subjects and real essence, but then it's all being performed by some of the most beautiful people you ever seen.
Yeah, that was my issue. They tried in the True Beauty show to make the main actress look ugly. They really tried. I can believe that. But she is still a stunningly beautiful woman, especially with makeup. So, yeah.
Two core issues arising from that. One of that is like the general equation of beauty and goodness, right? Beautiful people are good people. This one is international, right? We're not talking just purely about Korean industry and in Korean arts, by no means. Also in cartoons, you can see it quite clearly, right? The specific types of faces that you could see, I don't know, Jafar in Aladdin, or like Disney villains, right? They come to mind. They're very expressive, but they're also very particular. And a lot of these faces are also faces of people who exist somewhat. They're facial features of people that do exist. And a lot of times these are just images for the villains, but a lot of times there are also cultural background and cultural connotations tied to these as well.
I found out that it's called halo effect when beauty equals virtue. And when attractive people are also being perceived as more intelligent, kind, competent, and moral, regardless of absence of the evidence. I was thinking, going back to what you said, it is true, and I don't remember the book, but it was a female author also writing about the beauty industry and why do women feel so oppressed by beauty standards. The word standard shouldn't deceive you. It's not standard because everyone has it, but the opposite. The golden standard is we're going to take the most unique combination of facial features, but more precisely genes. It is a very rare genetic combination for a woman to stand out from the rest of the crowd. So by default, this rarest combination makes it very hard to fit into that standard. When did it turn that wrong? Before plastic surgery was that widely applied, if we are going to take the Hollywood history, take a look of the actresses, they really were attractive women, but they looked a bit more casual, a bit more like people who you can actually meet on the street, apart from their outstanding figure, of course.
I would say that it's more true of 70s and 80s and maybe a bit of 90s, but not necessarily of the early Hollywood era. Because even during the silent age, but then if you go into 30s, 40s, and 50s, like the golden age of Hollywood, oh my God, like the beauties that you had there were also quite, how to say it, extraordinary.
In my opinion, that applies to their breast size in comparison to their waist size.
But like if you look at the classics, I'm not saying Marilyn Monroe or Jane Mansfield. I'm saying before that, it was still super strict. I cannot imagine Barbara Streisand or Bette Midler the setting of 40s. You know what I mean?
Fair enough,
I feel like Hollywood producers would be very against everything that's so much out of the type that was at the time. It became much more interesting around like 70s and 80s. Again, there was like a Hollywood crisis around the time because of the huge economic crisis. Before that, it expanded the palette a bit. And then with the 90s, the pendulum swing backwards into the opposite direction. Also with the progression of the surgeries.
And compare that to the standards for male beauty. Male beauty was never a factor. Charisma was. And I was glad that it started to apply to female actresses a lot, but then like you said, it's swinging back. I remember watching a clip. I have no idea where it came from, but it was Sylvester Stallone. I think it was a pretty recent clip, giving advice in something that looked like a webinar on how to present yourself to a casting agent. And he mostly says that try to assess your physical features and to make a certain presence. So if you have, I don't know, low eyebrows and you could say that you look menacing, turn it to 11. Don't make them choose for you or try to guess what kind of character you're going to be. Make their choice easier, which I understand sounds probably like a reasonable thing, but it also sounds wild. To build your own actor's image, just your appearance alone, is an insult to you as an actor. It's also an insult to a viewer.
Yeah, and again, there is reason. There's like specific economic reason for actors to do that and to end up being typecast as a certain kind of character. I have like a dream project, so to speak, like to cast some of the most typically typecast villainous actors for them just to play regular dudes, just to be like, oh, these are our protagonists, and this is, I don't know, Willem Dafoe, Michael Shannon, Bern Gorman, David Dastmalchian, and people who usually are cast as exclusively villains. Well, maybe Willem Dafoe not as much nowadays, but still, and just to try to play against type, because a lot of them are also great actors. They're just good actors, and I feel like it would be interesting to see and would be interesting to present to people. Because again, like if you look like Jafar, it doesn't mean that you're bad. It means that, like, specifically Jafar as a character, he was a bad apple. But yeah, that's not how we should treat the characters and treat the actors playing them.
I'm pretty sure everyone's going to say this is the casting agent's fault, and they're going to say this is the producer's fault. And it goes again to studios not wanting to make creative choices that way, to challenge the opinions of beauty equals good.
Yeah, but also nobody knows anything. And this is the industry that is so volatile. If we're talking about arts, we're talking about cinema in this specific instance, but if we're talking about arts in general, very unpredictable market, because newsflash, no market is predictable unless you do insider trading. And so there is almost like a cargo cult surrounding and very conservative thinking surrounding every decision that is being made. Oh, this guy is being cast as a villain. Let's do it again. Oh, these two were together in a successful movie. Then let's cast these two again.
Yeah.
Because,
shit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I have a colleague. We spoke about the recent Kojima game, Death Stranding 2. I was like, hey, are you looking forward to that? And he was like, yeah, sure. I'm like, why no enthusiasm? He was like, well, he's casting all his friends again, right? Everybody from Hollywood again. And he's like, I don't, like, I play video games not to look at real actors. If I want to look at real actors, I'm going to go watch a movie. For the video game, give me new faces. Or if at least if you're casting somebody, cast someone I never seen before. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's a very fresh approach.
Not how the studios think, though.
No.
If we would take Soviet casting method, at least my perception of what I know about that and watching the movies is the casting would rely on taking people, women too, because as you know, women are people, to be charismatic, because charismatic is always better than just being beautiful. Your breast size didn't matter that much in Soviet cinema, because Soviet cinema to a high degree was about regular people, and so the main actors should look like regular people.
I think, as always, the reason for that is the economy of this, right? Because if we're talking about Soviet cinema as a non-capitalist cinema, which means that you're not relying on movies being a commodity, at least in theory, right? You're trying to make a piece of art, and that's the main thing. You have certain creative objectives, you have certain artistic goals that you set within a particular project, and this is what you're trying to do. And if you're making a socialist realist picture, then the people that you're trying to bring here need to be of a certain type. It is all about acting, and mostly about acting here. And the reason I'm also thinking about theater and the importance of theater background is that it's a different focus, right? It is about acting first and foremost. It is about charisma and presence, but presence is not only relying on beauty, as you mentioned before, right? So yeah, it's like a combination of various different factors. And the thing is, the person in the movie doesn't have to, in the Soviet movie, the actor doesn't have to then go on and do commercials for a burger franchise. You know what I mean? Like they don't need to do like a press tour for a freaking, I don't know.
They don't have to be a model for a famous fashion house or a sports brand.
We're bringing example of Soviet cinema, but also to make it a bit closer to our viewers, maybe in terms of reference. Even if you take 70s and 80s Hollywood movies, I'm going to say American movies, right? I remember sending you this meme about Colin Farrell, because in the new Batman with Robert Pattinson and in the TV series, spin-off TV series, you have Colin Farrell playing Penguin in freaking several dozen layers of makeup. He transforms completely, and he plays the role amazingly under all this makeup and everything. The actual makeup is amazing. His role is amazing. Yeah, he's a great character, great actor. Looks nothing like the actual person in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sending you the meme. It was like, there's a screenshot of a penguin character from the movie, and then a screenshot from some guy who's like,
he looks 90% like Colin Farrell in all the makeup.
Exactly. And like in the 70s, you would just cast a guy like this. You don't need to spend 4 hours in the makeup trailer to achieve this particular persona and this look. You could just cast a guy who's like this.
Unless you need a certain following for that actor to be your viewers and you're making a bet for the audience.
Exactly.
Which is horrible, because what happens if you build all your virtue as a society on beauty? Beauty is something that was given to you at birth or by a skilled surgeon, but it's never a reflection of your skills or talents, nothing like that. Honorable mention for staying fit, though. This is different. And I think this is a nice segue into talking about Korea's beauty industry. And circling back to that book that I mentioned, I'm going to find out the title and probably attach it to the description. But the book was about the capitalization on this oppression of making women specifically believe that they're not beautiful, that they're not enough, and they need to do something about their faces, their bodies, their skin to sell them either the service or a product. Like we said, that the beauty standard is something very genetically unique and outstanding from the crowd. But it feels like Korea, even in comparison to other Asian countries, is taking it to such an extreme. And I was shocked to find out that it is now considered to be a good gift for high schoolers who are about to graduate and enroll into a university or go find a job, to gift them like a coupon for a surgical procedure of not only glowing up. So we're not talking about like laser correction of the skin or whatever, but talking about plastic surgeries, like cutting your ears, reshaping your nose, reshaping your entire face, having your eyelids to be sliced to open up the eye even more. This is horrible.
Yeah, and also this is horrible also because it is like a social pressure kind of thing.
Would you say that beauty extremes are a sign of a super competitive economy? If your face has a lot of value in whether you're going to be hired or not.
Yeah. Well, what happens when you don't fit a certain criteria? You're being left behind. And what happens if you're left behind? Are you dead? Like what's then? I remember seeing a bit about a person who almost got into BTS. So he went through this boot camp preparation school to get into BTS because they have boot camps there, essentially.
Yeah, they can last for 10 years easily.
Yeah, it's very rigorous training and everything. And so this guy, I think he was rejected at the last moment, essentially. So he went through all of that, and then like right after the rejection, essentially they become a phenomenon, but he's not part of that. And he was friends with all of the BTS members, and from his interview, he says that he's not like jealous of the fame and fortune, but he's envious that they got to stay together and stick together as a group of friends. And so he was left out. He wasn't, I don't know, I don't want to make it sound as if it's like any of this is his fault, but like from the standpoint of their rigorous standards, again, huge air quotes, of these of their requirements, he didn't fit for some reason, and now he's left behind. And so they showed sort of, he has a quite modest sort of flat and everything, has a job or something, but what kind of existence is this?
Would you like to talk about your theory about disgust being a segue to fascism? If we're talking about beauty extremes as a sign of economic struggle.
That's the thing, right? I think one of the things that fascism lacks is a coherent, structured ideology.
How so?
Because it often relies on the pillars of aesthetics on one hand, and the other pillar of antagonism towards the other. So whether it's a xenophobia, whether it's a racism, nationalism, I don't know, hair-splittingly vague standards that can be unique to each country that goes through fascism as a tendency. And I think this over-reliance on the aesthetics on one hand, right? Because it does respond to aesthetic in a lot of ways, right? And then paired with this huge mistrust and antagonism over the other creates this cocktail where if we say that certain very particular beauty is the virtue, then what is something that is not? I think this creates just fertile ground for huge mess, essentially, because when you say that, oh yeah, the enemy looks a certain way, this creates the excuse to look down on the other, to oppress the other. It creates the barrier between, certain imaginary groups of people. We are the Ubermensch. We are the super people. We're the Aryans or whatever the fuck. And they are wrong. And if we're creating this situation where you have the star is the poster child for the beauty, the virtue, the whatever the hell. And then everyone else are the regular people. They're below. They're the Morlocks. And so they're not maybe really human. Of course, I'm taking this into the extreme, right? I'm not saying that this is how it is in Korea right now, but this is like a stepping stone towards that particular path.
I think you're right that fascism weaponizes disgust. Make it more a reaction that you don't overthink about. Dear listeners, if you are a disgust sensitive person, be aware.
And exactly, I'm not saying, I've heard takes that disgust is an inherently fascist feeling. I don't agree with this.
Nah.
I feel like there are things that we can definitely be repulsed about.
Yeah.
I don't know how extremely talented managers are dealing with the gaming industry right now.
That's an acquired taste.
It's
of
an acquired
disgust.
taste, yeah, sure. Yeah. But yeah, so if we're talking about purely from the aesthetical level, like if again, going back to the topic of idols and things that I've seen that, oh, this particular star, she gained a few pounds. Oh no, have you seen her? And I'm just looking at this before and after, and I'm like, these are the same picture. Like, no, seriously. And they're like, oh no, she's a fatso. Look at her. Look at her
horrible.
thighs. Yes, and it's horrible because the notion of a beauty standard in a way that seems to be universal, so to speak, it is a false notion, like from the get-go.
Even if we're going to trace how with evolution our perception of beauty changed, like
okay, if we're going back to the US, fashion in the 1920s and like the typical standards for female beauty in 20s and 30s, as opposed to 50s and then back to 60s and then back to 80s, the forms change.
I mean, it's constantly swinging between the extremes, because first people liked big boned women because it was easier for them to give birth and for the child and the person to survive.
Actually, I want to ask about this.
Okay.
One of the topics that is relevant to this is the topic of hyper-reality. And in the way that Baudrillard describes it, something that is being constructed, simulated, not necessarily real, like a performance that we sort of accept as a reality on its own. So it's as if we approached wrestling as if everything there was real. You know what I mean? But at times it seems as if the pop culture in general is like one big game of wrestling where everybody seems to accept that this is real, where it's not. Like most of it isn't real. Most of it is performative. Most of it is constructed. I think in our episode about Under the Silver Lake, which I don't know if it's going to be after or before that, I'm just dropping a hint there. But we mentioned Benny Blanco and like the whole topic of writing a song first and then picking a performer who's going to be best matched to sing this particular song, which to me feels completely counterintuitive to how artistry should be. I'm an artist. I want to express some of my feelings, my worldview, my perspective, my experiences, and I want to do this through a song. That's how I come to it. And if you start to do this mixing and matching, then it becomes quite mechanical. It's like a very industrial, we want to maximize profit and performance and success. That's why we take the song from here and this from here, and then we combine it here. The reason I'm saying all of that is I want to question if the rapid change of beauty standards, is it real or is it hyper-real? Isn't it just a part of the marketing campaign for each particular decade.
It existed long before capitalism existed. So it may be true now, or at least true to a high extent, but it existed throughout the ages. So if we would take women with, I don't know, with big thighs and fat women were a symbol of richness, of fertility, of course, because if you have meat on your bones, then you're not starving, which means your family earns some money, almost aristocracy. And then fast forward to right now, if you're fit and lean, then probably you belong to a higher class and can afford better food, sports, watch after yourself. If you're going to have 10, you're not belonging to a high class, because if you have 10, it means that you have to work in a field or do all this sort of labor, when the aristocracy was like this white-faced and white-skinned, beautiful and stuff.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, if you're 10, it means that you have money to go to a vacation and to afford doing nothing while having a suntan. Beauty has a very high dependency on the economy, for sure.
Absolutely.
It feels like the faster, the crueler capitalism becomes, the worse the hyper-reality is, the more aggressive it becomes. And logically, the more the pressure on women to beautify themselves and perfect themselves, the more the backlash grows. And for example, in South Korea, there is a 4B movement, and B in Korean means no, so a movement of 4 no's. This is a radical feminist movement where women basically don't want to have anything in common with men. No relationship, no sex, no children, no marriage. The movement itself in Korea is kind of in decline right now, but it's on the rise in the United States after Trump became the president. And it seems that it was a backlash against domestic violence and women being unprotected. Again, it is even mirrored in a lot of Korean dramas. And then there's another movement which is called Escape the Corset, and not only against forceful beautification and this horrible practice of, giving plastical surgeons as for graduating from school, but also corset as social norm and putting women into their place, because to this day, unfortunately,
the patriarchy is still strong, and it's interesting how this correlates with the soft boy aesthetic. You could argue that a lot of male performers in the K-pop sphere, they look quite androgynous in a way, right?
Yeah.
And female performers have this image of being fierce, of being they're the wrong kind of gals to mess around with, you know what I mean? They're like they have all the character traits that are quite pronounced, that they can be aggressively presenting in a way, right? In their movements, in the dance movements, in the lyrics and stuff like that. And it's interesting how, again, all of this is constructed as opposed to being like real, authentic representation of what is there for these people specifically, what is there in Korean society. So it's not, at least not to my knowledge, I don't know, maybe it is the case, but do you know of any songs that reflect on this 4B movement or any dance routines or whatever?
No, not really.
So that's the thing. It looks as if there's a marketable way to show what's on the edge of permitted, while still not promoting anything of substance. You know what I mean? Yeah, the guys are androgynous, but at the same time, there's this sort of prevailing image of what is actually masculine in the society that is affecting real people in the real world, which, again, detaches this whole performative thing from the real world even more.
I think it's finally the time to talk about the biggest topic here, about the idol industry and music industry, because circling back to K-pop Demon Hunters and why I think your idol is the best thematically, visually, musically, all sorts of things, best piece of the animation film is I have not seen I have not seen a mass product, be that a movie or TV show from Korea, that does not portray music industry as bad, especially that does not portray music labels as a bad place to be, as, labels always bad. Why it is so thematically relevant is this boy band from K-pop Demon Hunters, the sajaboys. They have their slave contracts with their biggest demon boss. They have to bring the souls of the fans to him. This is a very good reflection. I don't know if it's intentional or maybe it's just a coincidence of how things are in the music industry, not only in Korea actually, but for Korea it's true to even a higher extent. The slave contracts, so what is the pipeline of becoming an idol, right? Because at all times there's a lot of talented youth who want to become either a singer or an actor or some kind of media personality,
because
express
there's a
themselves.
lot of, but also there's a lot of fame and fortune like visibly tied to this. Like you could see all of these idols already, so it's a role model from the get-go.
Yeah, and so you have to start early. If you are lucky to pass the casting at the age of, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe 15 is probably a bit too late, but also possible. And then you have to stay for many years, up to 10 years, maybe even more, in this grinding talent school to be prepared to become a part of a band if you're successful. So it's a very long, very demanding process of molding yourself into a future idol. And again, there's a lot of talent. I was very surprised again to find out that the songwriter who made a lot of songs for K-pop Demon Hunters, I don't know if all the songs were written by her. She's also the singing voice of Rumi. She also was in this idol school for a long time, and she didn't pass. I don't know for whatever reason, but, the cutting edge is probably very sharp. And luckily for her, she became a songwriter, so she found another way to stay within the industry. But I can imagine how heartbroken she was when she found out that she's, she had a couple of not that fortunate debuts, and basically the studio gave up on her. So being an idol is really tough. And this is where my knowledge of the drama True Beauty becomes very interesting, because in the drama, those two boys, one of whom is portrayed by, as I mentioned, Chaeunwoo, the two boys are, or at least were, friends. They were musicians, and there was the third friend, and they were writing music together. The third friend was more successful, and so he made the first debut as a musician, as a future idol, with a music label. By coincidence, the music label is being run by one of the two guys' father. The label was trying to cover up some alleged love affair between the label owner and another model. And so I don't remember how exactly, but they blamed this third friend. And that led to that friend being bullied and to later committing a suicide, which broke the friendship between the two guys. A lot of things in that TV show is revolving around we didn't help him, he was under stress, and how badly the label was pressing them, how the labels are treating talent. That was year 2020, 2021 when the TV show aired. Imagine why surprised where I found out that this situation actually happened later. Not exactly like it. One of the actors who plays the son of the label owner, Chaeunwoo, is a member of a boys band called Astro. And in 2023, one of the singers of that Astro band, Moonbin, committed suicide. And before that, he had a history of anxiety, he had some health issues. It was like the entire pressure was too much. And the fans went on a strike against the label, blaming the label for not treating the guy to the extent and with the attention that he deserved, because it was known for them, and still allegedly they pressed him to go into the tour, and so it's turned into a tragedy. But it didn't stop there. When I was reading an article just dedicated to the funeral of Moonbin, I found 5 different names of also wannabe idols that also committed suicide because of the building pressure and mental issues that nobody was addressing or were not addressing properly, which makes me question how even sane this industry is. I mean, we talked about this separation, right, between super beautiful people and the rest of the people. And belonging to the rest of the people, we kind of feel that, I wish we could be more connected with the idols, or there wouldn't be such a high wall to talk to them, to make connection. But it works both ways, because people on the other side of the spectrum, they're also exceptionally lonely and also very isolated if they cannot talk to their friends about the mental issues they're having and there's nobody to help them with or to relieve the pressure. This is horrible. It should not work that way.
Yeah, I saw footage of like a training session, a choreography session, where you see a girls band. They were just catwalking, essentially. They were training the catwalk. And there was the guy who wasn't the choreographer. He was like either a producer or a manager. He was standing there. He was scolding one of the performers for her walk. Like he was literally abusing her verbally.
Jeez.
He singled her out, saying, "Hey, you stop doing that. Everyone else, let's do the walks back and forth." And then he was like, "Now return back to the group." And he was just audibly pointing out, like, everybody, look how silly she's walking. She's walking
my
like,
God.
I don't know, like he compared to her some sort of animal or something. Like she's walking like that. And then he was mocking her because she's offended and she's distressed. She cannot say anything against him though, because he's the main boss. He's the boss. And I remember there was a phrase was like, "Oh, you look upset. Was there a thought in your brain?" Yeah, for fuck's sake, right? This is like absolutely inhumane. And for what? For fucking performing, right? This is the level of
It's
abuse.
not like she's doing an open heart surgery, right?
So yeah, that's number one. And number two, like what's the disproportionate level of abuse towards that? Even if she was performing heart surgery, abusing her verbally doesn't help. So this is unacceptable in any situation, but here you're just doing dancing and singing, like
they end up in this horrible cage because they sign the slave contracts, and usually when you're out of, if you are being picked up from the talent school, you probably are going to sign a very long exclusive contract with the label, and
when we say very long, it's 10, 13 years, 15 years,
could
right?
be, yes, which is horrible because, again, circling back to our guy Eun Woo, it was either a piece of his interview or maybe a part of his concert where he just openly spoke about it. And he had tears in his eyes when he said, when we got picked up and we got gathered into this band, for some time after that, I felt like we were shelved and everyone forgot about us. So they got signed, and there were some changes in the management of the company. Their label was not even in the top 3 of biggest labels in Korea. The management changed and they are on a leash. They cannot leave. And then the label chooses not to use them, not to give them support, not to market them.
Yeah.
And he himself, of course, thank God and his parents for his beautiful face, sure, which is a number 1 marketing tool. But that guy himself had to pull a lot of weight to get into acting, to get more attention to the band, to write solo songs, to also funnel that into the fandom of his band. I want to believe that there was genuine desire to support the other guys in the band, which on one hand, the amount of work you have to do with the label taking so much from your cut and doing nothing
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, can you imagine how other, not necessarily in this band, but how other people feel from the band members when they're not as beautiful? I'm pretty sure there's a very high competition when it comes to looks and body composition and training and all the stuff. And there's a lot of offense in between the members.
Yeah. It does sound a lot like video game publishers, these labels, right? They try to minimize the efforts while maximizing their profits, essentially.
Yeah.
But like going back a little bit to the topic of authenticity, right? And I feel like it's also something that is tied to the hyper reality of this whole thing, right? Because when we're talking about each individual idol within the band and like the band in and of itself, there's almost like a mythology that is being created surrounding bands and surrounding each individual band member, because their images are being constructed. Like they're almost like the Spice Girls multiplied by 1,000 in a way, because each of them needs to have their own sort of thing and their own kind of character, again, air quotes here. And then there are loads and loads and loads of people who are responsible for creating these images, right? There's a whole teams of people who are there to do makeup, to do social media, to organize trips and press tours and so on, so on and so forth. Not to mention, of course, the composers, the songwriters, the technicians, etc., etc. So there's this whole machine that is there just to churn out content.
You're its slave, and be you even the most beautiful person in the world, you are not free, and nobody knows who you are. Maybe
Exactly.
the guys that you work with, your band members know, but nobody else is taking you for who you are, which is a torture. Because a lot of actors, not necessarily in the case of Astro, but less known bands and musicians in there, they have very little freedom about where and when they're going to tour and what are the conditions of that.
Mhm.
And they're going to press on you to stay silent, because if you're
Yes.
unhappy,
Yeah.
the door is open, you can leave, and there's going to
Sure.
be 1,000 people fighting for your place.
Jesus Christ. What are you saying? Are you saying that the K-pop industry needs to unionize?
I would love to see that.
It seems like they're all separated from each other. They're separated from the results of their labor.
Yeah.
They're not getting most of the profits because these go to labels and the owners, essentially. So this is a shitty arrangement. Although, considering even all of that, it still seems like a situation where a lot of people still strive to be in this position because it's better than the alternative, right?
I think we should be very conscious about super beautiful people and idols. I will never forget the TED talk that one of the fashion models gave. She basically said that you probably think that if I'm beautiful, I'm very confident in myself. The truth is, I'm very insecure. And any change in my face leads me to a downward spiral of disappointment, stress, this kind of stuff. Coming back to your idol song, we are already in a situation where we have basically demons with angel faces. So the fact that a person is beautiful absolutely does not mean that it's also a kind and, supportive person. Again, like you said, they have carefully curated images of themselves. I don't think that fans, again, arguing over, oh, she gained, 50 grams to her weight, is anywhere close of helping to move the situation into a more positive place. Even mental frame of trying to accept other people who they are.
I feel like it's the other end of this hyper reality is the people, the fans who are not part of creating it directly, but indirectly. They're doing fanfics, they're creating their own sort of discussions, and they're creating their own lore for these real people, which is weird to me. But I understand that this is like a direct result of the way that this business is set up, right?
Yeah.
Like when the term K-pop stan, right, was a thing. Like the fact that the term stan became a thing online.
Tell me more.
Do you remember Eminem's song Stan?
Yeah.
So this is the song about a super obsessive fan who was a stalker and all that. And The fan's name was Stan. And through cultural osmosis and memes and all of that, the word Stan then transformed into not necessarily a negative connotation. It lost its negative aspect. It was like, oh, you're just a big fan of something or someone. Oh, I'm a Beyonce stan. Or it can be used as a verb. Oh, I stan Beyonce. Or in this house, we stan, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I think this is the origin for this. I'm not even sure that most of the people who use the word stan online are even aware of Eminem's song at this point, which sort of betrays my age in a way. But yeah, there was this sort of period online, I want to say late 2010s, where the K-pop stans was a thing where people were obsessing over idols in such a way, and like particular in the bands and stuff, in such a way that sort of like, oh, I'm gonna create the whole account dedicated to this one person from this boys band, and every photo, a new promo photo was released of this, like, you know what I mean, like that level of thing. It's like a super new phenomena in and of itself. Yeah, I'm remembering like the Beatles or the Elvis Presley fans. You know, like super obsessive fan. This is like a phase for a certain kind of person, especially of a certain age. I'm sure that most of these people are teenagers at most. But one thing that is sort of interesting while looking at this is that the stans wrote a lot of fanfiction-y like posts where they take images and photos and snippets of these idols out of context, and they almost create their own like memes and jokes and also certain connotations. They create relationships when they're none, so to speak, and it has nothing to do with reality. Like the only link is that the person that they're discussing is actually a real person, but the everything else is sort of very, very far removed.
I think this is what happens when the power of admiration doesn't have any other outlet. Because this person or this band are really gated for their own sake, I guess. This vacuum of contact creates the need to speculate. It is partially true, the saying, don't meet your heroes. But I think meeting your heroes would actually help a lot of people to get over it faster, which is not what labels need, unfortunately. And on the other hand, I have a lot of compassion towards the stars and idols. I have a lot of respect for people who put a lot of work to excel in what they do. God is the witness, it's not easy, but the compassion also comes from understanding that people who choose, no matter what, to stay in this industry probably have addiction to attention, to collaboration, to climax. There is a part of the TV documentary by Netflix about Beckham. One of the famous footballers there said that it's very hard for a footballer to retire. They would usually try to play the game as long as possible because they are all addicts. There's nothing in the world that can compare to the entire stadium screaming your name or the adrenaline rush that you have during the football match. So whenever they stop playing, usually something happens to them. Either they gain a lot of weight or they go to other addictions. So it's really hard to, have a constructive way of life after you finish your career. And I feel like it's also very true when it comes to the performers, because we all age. For them, aging is just heartbreaking because a lot of their attractiveness is being binded to eternal youth. We all know that's not gonna happen, right? No. So imagine waking up in the morning being afraid that maybe there's somebody who's now more attractive than you, who's going to top the charts, and, living in the fear.
This is a rat race.
To wrap up on something more positive, I think there is the way out of this, and the way out is we need to understand the importance of full and comprehensive development of human potential in everyone. But we also need the economic means to provide that. Instead of fighting for idols, I think this is an economic basis that is worth fighting for.
Before that, you mentioned meeting your heroes, which is usually mentioned in like a negative connotation, right? But I was fortunate enough to meet with some of the people whose music I admired, and just in general, talk to musicians, talk to artists, performers from theater, from movies, from TV. And I feel like gaining this connection and having these conversations was always great. Like even if we didn't vibe with the person necessarily, it's always a good experience because you're seeing a humanity in the person, because you can talk about the craft, or you can talk about life, or you can talk about whatever. And like every time making this human connection is a good thing, at least for me. And I feel like you say, if as a society we strive to expand upon each person's potential, which kind of means that we're going to need to shift the ways that the musical industry works, the film industry, the creative industries, the way that they're going to work, and the pipelines that are created will change, which means in turn that we might have more access to just people doing all of this stuff. Overall, K-pop Demon Hunters, really nice movie. We really enjoyed it and highly recommend it. It is very kind, I would say, quite humane. It is showing the whole musical industry, idol industry in a more simplified fashion, but that's why it's a cartoon and not a documentary. But yeah, very nice one. We highly recommend it. Thank you for staying with us, and
see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting our project on Patreon at patreon.com/borzoicast, where you can enjoy ad-free episodes and bonus content. That's patreon.com/borzoicast.